ancient trees, their bark blackened by plasma burns, swayed in the sulphurous wind. In the valley's heart, where crystalline formations jutted from the earth like broken teeth, the most unlikely gathering in galactic history was taking place. Korath. The last Khan of the Drethkai limped toward the council circle, his obsidian claws clicking against the mineral-crusted ground. Half his face bore the melted scars of a plasma rifle, a gift from the Zephyrian betrayal 3 cycles ago. Behind him, the remnants of his proud warrior clan, once 10,000 strong, now barely 50, watched with hollow eyes that had seen too much death. Across the circle, Vexara of the Shadow Mantis coiled her serpentine lower body, her 4 arms crossed in defensive posture. The insectoid huntress had ruled the underground networks of 7 worlds before the biomech fleets came. Now she commanded perhaps 30 survivors, their chitinous armor cracked and dulled. Her compound eyes reflected the firelight like broken mirrors. The third member of this grim trinity was Storm's End, the ethereal patriarch of the Tempest Wolves. His pack had once ridden lightning across the storm worlds of the Outer Rim, their howl splitting the very atoms of reality. The massive creature's silver fur was now streaked with premature white, and only a dozen of his pack remained, their electromagnetic abilities flickering weakly in the thin atmosphere. "We gather under the blood moon," Koratha's voice rumbled. Across the valley, his words carrying the weight of ancient ritual. "Not as enemies, but as the forgotten. The abandoned. The hunted." Vexara's mandibles clicked in bitter agreement. The Zephyrians promised us glory when they recruited our clans to their banner. Instead, they used us as shock troops and left us to die when the tide turned. The Crystalline Empire offered us worlds. Stormzen's voice was like distant thunder. They gave us poison that corrupted our young and withered our pack bonds. The smaller predator clans formed an outer circle, the Bone Rippers with their calcium-hard hides, the Phase Stalkers who could slip between dimensions, the Void Swimmers who had once terrorized deep space. All bore the marks of betrayal, their numbers devastated by those they had once called allies. "The machines hunt us still," spoke Kesva, a Bone Ripper matriarch whose hide was scarred by acid burns. "The biomech scavengers strip our dead for parts, our young for experiments. We are sport to them now." "And the coalition?" Vexara's voice dripped venom. "They hunted us for bounties while their civilized worlds cheered. Our heads mounted on their warship walls." The circle fell silent except for the wind's mournful cry. These were creatures who had once ruled star systems, whose very names had struck terror into the hearts of 1,000 worlds. Now they huddled in a forgotten valley, their species on the brink of extinction. Koratha's scarred face turned toward the stars, remembering battles fought in the void between worlds. "We trusted the scaled ones, the winged ones, the mechanical ones. Each promised us a place in their vision of the galaxy. Each fed us to their enemies when it suited them. There is something else," Vexara spoke slowly, her natural suspicion warring with something deeper. "Something that has been troubling me." The others turned toward her, sensing the weight in her words. "When the biomech fleet attacked Nexus 7, when my hive sisters lay dying in the ruins, it was not our allies who came." Her voice grew quiet. "It was the humans. The small, soft ones we had dismissed as prey. They pulled my wounded from the wreckage. They gave medicine to our dying young." A ripple of unease passed through the gathering. To speak of humans with anything but contempt had once been unthinkable among the predator clans. "They buried our dead with honors," Storm's End added slowly, his electromagnetic field flickering with emotion. "When the Void Swimmers nest world. Burned, human rescue ships came first. Not to claim bounties. Not to scavenge. To save who they could. The fire crackled lower as the night deepened, and with it came the sharing of memories that had festered like wounds in the hearts of the predator clans. Korath found himself speaking of things he had never intended to voice. Kepler Station, he began, his scarred features softening in the firelight. After the Zephyrian betrayal, when my ship was crippled and drifting in the asteroid field. The human mining vessel that found us, they could have claimed salvage rights, sold us to the bounty hunters. Instead, their medic, a female barely taller than my forearm, worked for 18 hours straight to save my warriors. His claws traced the old scars on his chest. She had hands so small they could barely span my wounds, yet she stitched flesh that our own healers had given up on. When I asked why, she said, "Because you're hurt, and I'm a doctor." As if it were the simplest thing in the galaxy. Vexayare's compound eyes dimmed as she recalled her own encounter. The human xenobiologist who came to study our mating chambers. On Zirian Prime. We had killed 3 previous researchers from other species. They came to exploit our reproductive cycles, to steal our secrets. But she, Dr. Chen, I think her name was. She asked permission. She waited outside our sacred spaces until we invited her in. The Shadow Mantis matriarch's voice carried a note of wonder. She spent 2 full seasons learning our language, our customs. When the Crystalline Empire bombed our world, she stayed behind to help evacuate our larvae. I watched her carry our young to safety while our own allies fled. Around the circle, other voices began to join the strange testimony. A phase stalker spoke of human peacekeepers who had shared their rations with enemy wounded. A void swimmer told of human engineers who had risked the vacuum of space to repair their ship's life support while battle raged around them. "They are weak," muttered Gorth, an old bone ripper whose tusks had been cracked in 100 battles. "Their ships are slow, their weapons primitive. They should have been extinct long ago. Yet they endure," Stormsend observed, his electromagnetic field pulsing thoughtfully. "While empires rise and fall, while species conquer and die, the humans persist. They adapt, they survive, they help." "Help," Vexayare repeated the word, as if tasting something foreign. "When did we last help another species without expecting something in return?" The question hung in the air like smoke from the dying fire. Around them, the younger members of each clan listened in stunned silence. They had been raised on tales of human weakness, of easy prey that could be harvested from their slow ships and primitive colonies. This image of humans as the saviors shattered everything they thought they knew. Korath Azaid, a young Drathkai named Thyss, spoke hesitantly. "Khan, I was with the scouting party that watched the human outpost on Sigma Draconis. When the famine came, they opened their stores to refugees from 17 different species. They gave away half their own food supplies." "Foolishness," Gorth growled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Or wisdom," Korath said quietly. "Those 17 species remember. When the hegemony attacked the human colony on New Geneva, 12 different fleets came to their aid. Species that had no treaty with them, no obligation. They came because they remembered the food, the medicine, the hands that helped them in their darkest hour." Vexayare's mandibles clicked in what might have been admiration. "They make allies of their enemies, while we make enemies of our allies." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of ozone and distant rain. In the darkness beyond the firelight, something moved, not threatening, but watchful. The predator's enhanced senses detected no immediate danger, but something was out there. "There's another thing," Stormzen said, his ears pricked toward the darkness. "The humans are here. On Drenhal. They've been watching us for weeks." The revelation should have triggered immediate defensive responses, weapons drawn and claws extended. Instead, the predators found themselves curious. "Watching us die?" Gorth asked. "Watching us grieve," Korath corrected. "I've seen their thermal signatures, their camouflaged observation posts. They could have called in our location to the bounty hunters a dozen times over. Instead, they've been in." He paused, searching for the right word. "Guarding us." The implications of this settled over the gathering like a blanket. In the vast, hostile galaxy where everyone was either predator or prey, alliance or enemy, the humans occupied a unique position. They were the witnesses, the helpers, the ones who stayed when others fled. "Only humans are left to trust," Vexara said softly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. The phrase hung in the air like a challenge to everything they had believed about strength, about survival, about the nature of the galaxy itself. Dawn broke grey and cold over Thornspire Valley, the alien sun filtering through atmospheric haze that tasted of metal and old grief. The council fire had burned down to embers, but none of the predator leaders had slept. They sat in contemplative silence, each grappling with a revelation that challenged the very core of their warrior cultures. It was Thyss, young and keen-eyed, who spotted the small device first. "Khan," he called, pointing to a depression in the crystalline formation about 50 meters from their gathering spot. "There's something there." Asterisk. The device was clearly human in origin, sleek, compact, with the distinctive blue steel alloy they favored. It pulsed with a soft amber light, obviously active but not threatening. Korath approached it cautiously, his scarred face reflecting the device's gentle glow. A communication beacon, Vexara identified, had technological expertise surpassing the others. Human frequency, low power. "It's been broadcasting for hours." "Broadcasting what?" Stormzen asked, his electromagnetic sensors probing the device's energy signature. Vexara's manipulator arms extended, interfacing with the beacon through her natural bioelectric field. Data flowed across her compound eyes in rapid streams of light. "It's her message. Audio and visual. Addressed to the survivors of Thornspire Valley." The predators exchanged glances. The humans knew exactly where they were, had been monitoring them, and yet the message wasn't a demand for surrender or a threat of incoming firepower. "Play it," Korath commanded. The beacon projected a hologram, a human female, middle-aged. By their standards, with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore the simple grey uniform of the Interspecies Relief Corps, though her insignia indicated high rank. Her face was weathered but kind, marked by the kind of lines that came from years of difficult decisions made with compassion. "My name is Commander Sarah Chen," the hologram began, her voice carrying across the valley with surprising clarity. "I am the regional coordinator for humanitarian operations in the Outer Rim territories. I know you can hear this, and I know you have every reason not to trust any communication from off-world." She paused, her eyes seeming to look directly at each of the predator leaders in turn. "I also know what you've been through. The betrayals, the hunts, the slow extinction of everything you once held dear. I know because we've been watching, not to report your positions to the bounty hunters, but to understand. To witness. To remember. Vexayare's mandibles clicked softly. She uses the word a witness the way we use honor. Your species once ruled star systems, Chen continued. You were the apex predators of your domains, and while our peoples may have been enemies, there was a dignity to that conflict. A natural order. What has been done to you since the betrayals, the biomech hunts, the systematic extermination? This is not war. This is not honor. This is simply wrong. The hologram flickered as a breeze disturbed the beacon's position, but Chen's voice remained steady. I cannot offer you your empires back. I cannot resurrect your dead or heal wounds that run deeper than flesh. But I can offer you something else: sanctuary. Safety. A chance to rebuild not as the predators you were, but as the survivors you've become. Storm Zen's electromagnetic field pulsed with agitation. Sanctuary implies dependence. We do not beg for scraps. There is a world, Chen's message continued, as if anticipating his objection. Designation Kepler, 442c. Rich in resources, defendable. With ecosystems suitable for all your species. It's beyond the reach of the biomech fleets, outside the jurisdiction of the coalition bounty hunters. We can provide transport, initial supplies, and then we leave you to build whatever you choose. To build. The projection showed orbital images of the world, verdant continents separated by deep blue oceans, mountain ranges that could hide entire civilizations, forests that stretched beyond horizons. Why? Koratha's voice was barely above a whisper. Why offer this to us? Chen's image smiled sadly. Because we remember the Andorian rescue, Commander Korath. When human freighters were caught in that stellar storm near Rigel, and you ordered your fleet to assist despite the fact that we were technically enemies at the time. You saved 8,000 human lives that day, and when our Admiralty asked for your terms, you said, no terms. Rescue is its own reward. Koratha's remaining eye widened. That had been over a decade ago, before the war, before the betrayals. He had never expected those words to be remembered, let alone by his former enemies. And Dr. Vexayare, Chen's gaze seemed to shift to the Shadow Mantis matriarch. Your research on quantum biological interfaces helped us cure the Martian plague. You published your findings openly, refusing all payment. 40 million human lives saved by your generosity. Vexayare's compound eyes dimmed with something that might have been emotion. I had forgotten, she whispered. We haven't, Chen said firmly. We remember every kindness, every mercy, every moment when you chose to be more than just predators. And now, when you need help, we choose to be more than just prey. The message was nearing its end, but Chen's final words would echo in the valley long after the hologram faded. The transport ship Meridian will arrive at the Thornspire Valley landing coordinates in 72 hours. There will be no weapons, no guards, no conditions. Just empty cargo holds and enough supplies to get you started on your new world. The choice is yours. But know this, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. And you are not beyond redemption. The hologram flickered out, leaving the predators in stunned silence. After long moments, Gorth spoke, his voice rough with emotions he had no words for. They remember things we had forgotten about ourselves. They see us as we were, Vexayare added. Not as we became. Korath stood slowly, his scarred face turned toward the sky where, in 72 hours, salvation would either arrive or not come at all. Only humans are left to trust, he said again, and this time it wasn't a lament, it was a decision. 72 hours crawled by like wounded prey, each moment stretching under the weight of impossible hope. The predator clans had spent generations learning to trust nothing, to expect betrayal from every alliance, to prepare for abandonment from every friend. Now they found themselves doing something far more dangerous than facing any enemy. They were waiting for someone to keep their word. Korath paced the valley's edge, his enhanced hearing picking up the distant thunder of approaching engines. Long before the others could detect them, his scarred face turned skyward as a sleek vessel descended through Drenhal's perpetual haze, its hull bearing the simple blue and white insignia of the Interspecies Relief Corps. The Meridian was not a warship. That much was immediately clear. Its lines were too clean, too purposeful for combat. This was a vessel built for one thing, carrying refugees to safety. As promised, no weapons bristled from its hull, no escort fighters flanked its approach. It came alone, trusting, vulnerable. "They are actually here," Thyss breathed, his young voice filled with wonder. The ship settled into the valley with surprising grace for something so large, its landing thrusters barely disturbing the crystalline formations. Steam rose from the superheated ground, creating an ethereal mist that seemed to part like a curtain as the cargo ramp lowered. Commander Sarah Chen emerged first, exactly as she had appeared in the hologram, but somehow more real, more fragile. She was followed by a small crew, perhaps 20 humans in the simple gray uniforms of the Relief Corps. No soldiers, no security team, no weapons visible. Just people who had chosen to trust their former enemies with their lives. The two groups faced each other across 50 meters of scarred ground, predators who had once ruled star systems, and humans who had chosen to help rather than hunt. The silence stretched until Chen stepped forward, her hands visible and empty. "Commander Korath," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the thin air. "Thank you for trusting us enough to wait." Korath's response caught in his throat. In all his years of war and diplomacy, no one had ever thanked him for trusting them. Trust had always been taken, demanded, or assumed, never acknowledged as a gift. "Commander Chen," he managed, inclining his massive head in what passed for a bow among his people. "You came." "We gave our word," she replied simply. Dr. Vexara, Lord Storm's End, honored representatives of the surviving clans, "We have room for all of you, and supplies for your journey." Asterisk behind her, the human crew began unloading crates with practiced efficiency. Food, medicine, tools, portable shelters, water purification systems, everything needed to establish a foothold on a new world. But more than that, they were unloading hope. Vexara approached cautiously, her forearms moving in the complex gestures that served her species as formal greeting. "The world you showed us, Kepler 442c, it is truly available. No other claimants. No hidden costs." Chen's smile was genuine. "The only cost is that you must share it with each other. Your species may have been enemies once, but your children will grow up together on that world. They'll need to learn to be neighbors, not just survivors." Asterisk one of the human crew members, a young man with kind eyes and gentle hands, approached a group of Drathkai younglings who had been watching from behind their elders. He knelt down to their level, a gesture of respect that was not lost on Korath, and offered them something from his supply pack. "Nutrient bars," the human explained. "They are designed to be compatible with most carbon-based metabolisms." Would you like to try one? Asterisk. The younglings looked to their Khan, who nodded slowly. When they bit into the bars, their eyes widened with delight. It was the first new food they had tasted in cycles, and it was sweet. They taste like the fruit from Homeworld, one of the younglings whispered. From before the burning. The human smiled. We thought you might appreciate that. Our food synthesizers have been working with the metabolic data from your old worlds, trying to recreate some of the flavors you might have missed. Korath felt something crack inside his chest, not breaking, but opening. These humans had not just offered them sanctuary, they had offered them the taste of home. Around the valley, similar scenes played out. Human medics examined wounded predators with gentle hands, offering treatment with no expectation of payment. Engineers demonstrated the equipment they had brought, showing how the terraforming tools could help establish agriculture on the new world. Children from both sides watched each other with curiosity rather than fear. There is one thing I must. No, Stormzen said, his electromagnetic field pulsing with barely contained emotion. Why do you help us? Your species has no biological imperative for altruism toward other apex predators. Your governments have no strategic gain from our survival. Your people have no cultural tradition that demands this sacrifice. Why? Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching as a human child showed a young shadow mantis how to work a handheld gaming device, both of them laughing at the simple light show it created. Because, she said finally, someone has to remember that mercy is not weakness. Someone has to prove that extinction is not inevitable. Someone has to break the cycle of betrayal and abandonment that has poisoned this galaxy for too long. She turned to face the assembled predator leaders, her weathered face serious but not unkind. But mostly, we help because we've learned something important: the strongest predators are not those who consume everything around them. The strongest predators are those who know when to hunt and when to heal, when to take and when to give. You've been predators your whole lives. Perhaps it's time to learn to be protectors instead. As if summoned by her words, the first drops of rain began to fall from Drenhal's grey sky, the first rain the valley had seen in months. The predators turned their faces upward, letting the water wash away the dust of their long exile. The Meridian is fueled and ready, Chen announced. Kepler 442c is 3 days away at moderate speed. When you're ready to go home, to your new home, we'll take you there. Home. The word hung in the rain-washed air like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The transition from the sterile corridors of the Meridian to the warm, oxygen-rich atmosphere of Kepler 442c was like being born again. As the transport ship descended through cloud layers that painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, the predator clans pressed against the viewports, seeing their new world for the first time with their own eyes. Below them stretched continents of impossible beauty, vast forests of towering trees with silver bark, crystalline rivers that caught the light of twin suns, mountain ranges that disappeared into mist and mystery. It was a world untouched by war, unmarked by betrayal, clean of the blood and bitter memories that had stained their former territories. The southern continent has the most diverse ecosystem, Chen explained as they circled the world. Suitable for all your species' different needs. The northern landmass has the mineral deposits you'll need for technology, and the archipelago chains will provide natural barriers if you need them. Korath studied the tactical implications automatically, then caught himself These were no longer calculations for war, they were plans for peace. The landing site was a broad meadow beside one of the crystal rivers, surrounded by the silver-barked trees that seemed to hum with some kind of natural energy. As the Meridian's ramp lowered, the predators took their first steps onto soil that had never known their presence, breathing air that carried the scent of growing things instead of smoke and death. The younger generation adapted first, as they always did. Drathkai cubs raced through the grass, their claws finding purchase on this new ground. Shadow mantis larvae clicked excitedly as they discovered the mineral-rich soil that would be perfect for their molting cycles. Young tempest wolves howled with joy, their voices echoing off the distant mountains without carrying any note of grief for the first time in years. "It's beautiful," Vexara whispered, her compound eyes tracking the flight patterns of native creatures that looked like living jewels. No scars. No ruins. Just a possibility. Over the following days, as the human crew helped establish the first permanent structures, something remarkable began to happen. The predatory clans, who had spent generations as enemies, began to work together. Not out of desperation this time, but out of hope. Drathkai warriors, their strength legendary, helped Shadow Mantis engineers excavate the foundation for the first interspecies settlement. Tempest wolves used their electromagnetic abilities to power the construction tools, while bone rippers shaped the building materials with their natural acid secretions. Species that had once tried to exterminate each other now shared meals, shared labor, shared dreams of the future. Chen watched it all with the satisfaction of someone who had bet everything on the better angels of nature and won. "You know," she said to Korath as they stood together watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, "I think this might actually work." "You never doubted it would," Korath observed. "Even when we doubted ourselves." "Oh, I doubted," Chen admitted. "Right up until the moment you chose to wait for our ship instead of fleeing into the deep wilderness. That's when I knew that trust was possible." A commotion near the construction site drew their attention. A human child, one of the crew members' daughters who had insisted on coming along, had fallen into the river while trying to collect some of the luminescent stones from the bottom. The current was strong, and the child was being swept downstream toward where the waters grew deeper and more dangerous. Without hesitation, Thyss dove into the river. The young Drathkai's powerful limbs cut through the water with ease, and within moments he had the child safely in his arms. But instead of swimming back to shore, he paused in the middle of the river, treading water while the human child clung to his neck. "Are you hurt?" Thyss asked in carefully practiced human language. "Do you need healing?" The child shook her head, more amazed than frightened. "You saved me," she said in wonder. "Mommy said you were scary, but you saved me." "Not scary," Thyss replied with a gentleness that would have been impossible to imagine in the old days. "Just different. We are all different here, but we help each other. That's what neighbors do." As they reached the shore, the child's mother ran to embrace them. Both, human and Drathkai together. The image would stay with Korath for the rest of his long life, the moment when fear finally gave way to trust, when enemy became neighbor, when predator learned to protect. 3 months later, the first interspecies council meeting convened. In the great hall they had built together, its walls carved with symbols from all their cultures intertwined. Representatives from each clan sat together around a circular table, no head position, no hierarchy, just equals planning their shared future. The northern mining operation is ahead of schedule, reported Kesva, the old bone ripper matriarch whose acidic touch had proven invaluable in extracting rare minerals. The Tempest Wolf's electromagnetic processing has increased our efficiency by 300%. The Southern Agricultural Project shows promise as well, added Vexara. Shadow mantis pollination techniques combined with Drathkai soil preparation have produced hybrid crops that exceed all expectations. But it was the smallest voice that spoke the most important truth. THYSS, now serving as liaison between the younglings of all species, stood to address the council with news that would have been unthinkable in the old galaxy. The children have chosen names for themselves, he announced. Not clan names or species designations. They call themselves the Kepler generation. They say they belong to this world, not to the wars of the old worlds. The council fell silent, absorbing the implications. In one simple act of naming, the young ones had declared their independence from the cycle of violence that had defined their parents' lives. Stormzen's electromagnetic field pulsed with what his people recognized as deep contentment. Then, we have succeeded beyond our wildest hopes. We came here as refugees, as the last remnants of dying peoples. But our children will be something new. Something better. Citizens, Chen said quietly from the observer's gallery where she sat with the small human diplomatic team that had remained to help with the transition. They'll be citizens of a world where species don't matter as much as character, where strength is measured in what you protect rather than what you destroy. Korath looked around the table at faces that had once been marked only by scars and loss. Now they bore new lines, the kind that came from laughter, from hope, from the satisfaction of honest work building something instead of tearing it down. Asterisk.